I'm so grateful that we're not just talking about a God who did some great things and lived at one time, but one who is alive. You heard the stories, and the question that I have for you is exactly the statement that each of those stories ended with. If you remember, each of them said, that's just one of the ways that Jesus has resurrected me. So I'd like to ask you a question this morning. How has Jesus resurrected you? How has Jesus resurrected you? In Luke chapter 24, Luke records the resurrection morning. Early in the morning on the first day of the week, very early, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly two men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen." What does that resurrection mean to you? And how has Jesus resurrected you in your life? I want us to follow a story in Luke's words as he continues to tell the story of what happened after the resurrection of Jesus. He appeared, we know, for over 400 or 500 people actually saw Jesus alive, not as a ghost, but actually talked with him, ate with him, sat down with him, walked with him, prayed with him, and his followers saw all of this. And I don't know how you would trick or corroborate 500 different people into saying the same exact story over and over, especially when it wasn't in groups, and it wasn't. In fact, one of my favorite stories recorded in Scripture is found in this passage in Luke chapter 24. It says this: "Now that that same day, two of his followers, were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him." Jesus himself. Now, I don't know what you would do if you walked out of your tomb. I don't know if you guys ever seen those prank videos, where the ones with the casket. I think they're horrible. It's so mean. Where right, the casket, I have this image, of someone in the casket, and right in the middle of the sermon, they get up, But if you got, this is days later, that the funeral happened, y'all. The funeral already done. They're in grieving. They're mourning. What would you do if you got a chance to walk out of your grave? And I think this is funny too, because Jesus, if you don't think Jesus has a sense of humor, come on, y'all, you need to read this, because listen to this. As they were talking about all these events, Jesus walks up himself. And it's like, so what are you guys talking about? Like, isn't that kind of one of your fantasies? Like, so how'd the funeral go? What did they say about me? What did they say about the person who passed away? What happened? How was the music? Some of you might be taking notes. Did they get it right? Okay. Jesus has this opportunity, but I don't know if I'm Jesus and I've just risen from the dead, I've got some plans. In fact, if you remember, it didn't go so well for Jesus. Have you seen the movie Taken? I'm just saying, Jesus had a very specific set of skills, and if he wanted to, there were a list of people who betrayed Jesus, and if it were me, I'd go back to that list. I'd be like, what's up? I know you wanted me dead, but I'm back. I'd go back to the trial. I would tell people, or if you really wanted to make a movement of it, if you really, now, I don't think like a world leader. I don't think like a movement, like Jesus was the leader of a movement that changed the world, okay? So I got to try to put myself in his shoes, but if I put myself in his shoes, then I want to draw a crowd. I want to get some good word of mouth going, get some marketing movement going, let people know, hey, this guy who was dead, he's not dead. Oh no, he was killed. We have witnesses. The government, his followers, his family, they all saw it. It was horrific. He was brutally murdered. We saw it. But he's going to be in this stadium on Saturday, April 4th. Don't miss it. But that's not what Jesus does. Jesus, according to Luke, joins two travelers on the road. Now, scholars believe that these two followers were already following. In fact, they came from Jerusalem. In fact, they believe them to be, as they go on through the story, Cleopas, and some people believe his wife. Some people it was one of the Marys that's recorded who went to the tomb. Some people believe that Mary was in one of the Marys in the upper room. These people were close followers of Jesus, okay? And they're walking on the side of the road, but they don't recognize him. He gets to verse 17. He asks them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" I wonder. They stood still, their faces downcast. I love this because Jesus could have done anything after his resurrection, and what he did was immediately make it personal. Immediately, Jesus could have drawn the crowd. He could have shocked the world. He could have went back and had revenge. He could have shown up in so many ways, but Jesus joined them on their path. And regardless of where you are with Jesus today, Jesus wants to join you on your path right where you are. The resurrected King himself, with all of the power of the resurrection, who could do anything in the world. He could change the world. He could change everything. He could take over if he wanted to. They were hoping when he came into Jerusalem, those palm branches they were waving, that was a sign of revolt. They wanted to revolt, but they didn't know revival was coming. They wanted revolution, but they didn't know that relationship was his priority. And then they didn't get what they wanted, right? Man, careful. Because if you expect the wrong thing, I wonder what you do next with that. Well, with this group, from Sunday to Thursday, they're putting them on trial. He didn't do any of the things we expected him to do. I wonder how often Jesus is on trial in my life because he didn't do any of the things I expected him to do. But the first thing he did was come and join two people on a path. And the first thing he wants to do with you, he just wants to join you where you're at. There's no preconditions. There's no clean it up first. He just wants to join you on your path, right where you're at. Because the resurrection is personal. It's not just a global movement. It's a personal movement, and you're the one he wants to move. So he joins them on the path, and Jesus says, Cleopas asks, hey, what are you guys talking about? Cleopas asks him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem that does not know the things that have happened? Man, are you the only one? Jesus, did you not live through 2020? Did you not know that we have lost everything? Did you not know that they took our brother, our family member, our leader? Did you not know? Are you the only person? Jesus, in other words, where were you? Where were you? Have you ever asked Jesus that question? Jesus, where were you when I was growing up? How could you possibly be walking with me? I don't think sometimes it's just Jesus who keeps him being recognized. I think our expectations of Jesus keep us from recognizing him. Jesus, where were you in 2020? Where were you in 2020 when I went through loss? When I lost my business? When I lost my loved ones? Where were you with hundreds of thousands of people dying of a virus that if you spoke the word, you could stop? Jesus, where were you? They were asking the same kinds of questions. We thought this was going to be a movement that we would follow. You would see Jesus, the King of the Jews and Jerusalem. Hey, y'all, God's chosen people. You think God would want to redeem it? And then they start to complain. They start to say this. So they said to him, man, we had hoped. What things? He said, ask. The chief priests, the rulers, handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped. He was a powerful prophet. He was, in word and deed, but they took him away. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel, who would put Israel back on the map, who would finally let the world know his chosen people are here. So step back. Stop oppressing them. Take away our plight. He was a prophet. He was powerful. He was. And we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since all this took place, verse 22. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. So then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. I imagine if I'm going back to that tomb, I'm thinking probably some of the things like I'm probably coming after the guards who were standing in front. But they rolled that big stone in front of that grave so this wouldn't happen. They did it so that no one would steal the body and claim a resurrection. His followers came there and were shocked that he wasn't there. And so they came and they didn't see Jesus. Let me ask you a question. What is stopping you in your life, or what are you walking through that's stopping you from seeing Jesus today? I'm wondering for me too. This has been one of the hardest years of my entire life. I have never experienced trauma like this and relationships broken to the point that they are. I have never experienced watching the church be pulled apart before my very eyes as I try to lead. And enough about me. I bet you you have never experienced a year anything like this. So Jesus, where were you? And if you're so personal, I've got a list of things that I'm wondering why you didn't change. And so they show up at the tomb and they didn't see Jesus. And finally, Jesus teaches them what the resurrection is beyond just joining you on the path. He teaches them also that the resurrection has purpose, that it has purpose for us in this. And he joins us, not just on the path, but he joins us to change us. Jesus can't take it anymore. Verse 25, he says to them, "How foolish are you, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? Didn't you remember? Weren't you there?" He goes on in verse 27, "And beginning with Moses and all of the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself." But they didn't see that coming. They thought he'd, forget rising again. They thought that Jerusalem would rise again and he'd be the leader of it. And then they killed that leader, and then they thought it's all over. They were standing before the great I Am and saying he was. They were standing before Jesus, who walked out of the tomb and saying, "We had hoped." To Jesus, who overcame the grave. Y'all, what else is there to overcome in your life that's more powerful than death? And if we're truly honest, one of the reasons we don't see Jesus is because he doesn't see it the way we see it. Because if I were to put Jesus in charge and I were to explain and I were his closest counselor and confidant, I would say, "Hey, Jesus, we got to get this right." Right? Wouldn't you? I wouldn't go through any of those things. I would change it. Because I have a whole list of things I want to change, but Jesus came with one thing on it. That was you. That was your name. And not just one. For all of the names who would come after you. And those who are around you. There's nothing more personal than resurrection power. But power wielded from our hands would change all the things. Power in the hands of a Savior would change you. He would join your path. He would come alongside you. And sometimes we need to be reminded that, listen, that Jesus has a plan. You just can't see it. We get this confused all the time regarding my free will decisions versus God's will and direction. It's a confusing thing. Going all the way back to the garden. I was just talking to a friend about it the other day. Like, how does this work exactly? Jesus creates all of humankind. He creates this beautiful earth and all that's in it. And then he says it's good. And then he creates mankind and they're in fellowship. And he lets Satan in the garden? What? He already knew what was going to happen. Why would he do that? And then Satan gets in the way and comes and tempts Eve. And then Adam makes a decision. And so sin entered the world through the first Adam. And Paul, one of his followers, teaches us that now Jesus is the Adam that changes everything through forgiveness. But from the very beginning, if I were in charge, I'd do it differently. And we have this tension between which part of this is us and which part of this is God, right? And we get this mixed up sometimes because we want to control outcomes, timelines, and changes. We're like, okay, here's what I want to control. Here's what frustrates me. It frustrates me on these timelines. It frustrates me on the outcome. It doesn't go the way I think, I'm frustrated. It doesn't work in the time that I'm hoping, I'm frustrated. It doesn't happen in the way that I want it or what's changed. I'm not worried. Jesus, I'm good. Change all these other people. Have you read social media lately? Come on, Jesus, you got some work to do. We have all the change and all the timelines and all the outcomes worked out, and actually it's reversed. Jesus says, no, I don't, that's not what you're supposed to control. You're not supposed to control outcomes. Those are in the hands of someone else. So stop planning outcomes. Stop frustrating yourself. Here's what Jesus says. You control your decision. You control your decision. Because not only does Jesus join you on the path of wherever you are today, not only does he join you on the path, not only does he join you in changing you, but he joins you in mission. He joins you in a movement, not just to change you, but to change you first, because there's a mission involved. And it begins with this relationship. Listen to what verse 28, the rest of the story goes on to say. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if going further. But they urged him strongly. They urged him strongly to stay with them. Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over. So he went in to stay with them because Jesus wanted to spend time with them. And when we invite him to spend time, it's always, always a yes. You got the whole world to plan. I got to get back to Jerusalem. There's a lot of people wondering. There's some women who I really love who freaked out a bunch of guys who I really love and told them the tomb is empty. I need to get word back to them that it's okay. I'm alive. No one stole my body. It's me. I'm walking in my body because I walked out of the grave. But they just make this one request. Hey, would you stay with us a little longer? And Jesus is like, I'm good. Because ultimately what he was hoping for was a relationship. He was hoping for an exchange with you, and an intimate conversation. He was hoping to have community with you. But then when we have that community, it compels us, right? Because he says, so they stayed with him, verse 30, when he was at the table, he took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them, and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. Because when you spend time with Jesus, you begin to see him for who he is. When you spend time in relationship, you begin to see Jesus. And before this, notice the shift that's happened, because before this, they were like a newsreel from Jerusalem. This happened. Our great prophet, he was a great prophet. We had hoped these things would happen, but his body, and now they've taken his body. Now his body's gone. They're just repeating. They're just like the Jerusalem echo chamber news channel, whatever that channel is. Okay, I won't say yours. I won't say, because yours reports the real news, by the way, the one you like. But they're just like, they got all this stuff in their head. They can't get it out. And then Jesus shows up, and they like start to talk with them and finally start to spend time with them. And suddenly their eyes are open. They're not talking about what happened in Jerusalem anymore. They're not talking about what they had hoped for. They're not talking about their broken dreams, their broken hearts, their broken hopes. They're now just talking about, can we break some bread? Can we stay in this moment And as soon as he broke the bread, verse 32, or verse 31, their eyes were open and they recognized him. Verse 32, they asked each other, weren't our hearts burning within us while he talked? Do you notice he doesn't say, weren't our hearts burning within us because he told us he would, don't worry, I'm going to change all the government. I'm going to take it over. Don't worry, Jerusalem's going to be back in charge. Don't worry, I'm going to fix that. Don't worry, I'm going to fix that. Don't worry, I'm going to bring that person. Hey, listen, don't worry, I'm going to take care of them. No. Their hearts were burning as he talked. When you have an opportunity to spend time with Jesus, that's a decision that's in your hands. He didn't force them to do it. He started walking as if he was going to keep walking. Do you see that? Jesus is walking like he's going to keep walking. They stopped him because Jesus never forces himself in a relationship with you. He leaves that to you. He said, if you could just leave the outcome to me and finally stop taking control of what should be in my control and start taking control, take back control, what should be in your hands, which is your journey, and let me join you there. Let me tell you, what are you deciding to do? What will you decide to do with Jesus? How are you spending time with him? Oh, I'm screen fatigued, Pastor. Oh, I'm so tired of watching it on the TV. Oh, I'm so tired of it. Oh, I can't come. I know. Jesus joins you on the path. Just invite him into the path that you're in. Jesus, I got a list of things that I need you to take over. Jesus, I need you to open these schools and get these kids out of my house. Please, Jesus. And Jesus just joins you and your whole family and all the chaos and all the craziness. And he joins you in the midst of your concerns. He joins you in the midst of your grief. He joins you on your path. He only asks as he goes to continue and he keeps walking, what will you do? Will you let him keep walking and say, hey, this was a great Easter. This was awesome. Thanks for hanging out. See you next year. It's up to you. And listen, I got love for whatever your decision is. I'm good. We're going to be here next year. I'm going to be here the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that. I'm going to be here. Jesus just gives us the choice. He's not angry at you because you missed some Sundays or missed some time with him or didn't hang out. He just can't wait to spend time with you, to hang out with you, to be involved with you. If only we'd stop for a moment and stop giving him our list and start listening, we might be able to give him our life then. Listen to what happens, because intimacy inspires action. Intimacy with God always inspires the mission of God. Listen to what happens next. So, at once, they got up and returned when? Next week? Tomorrow, when the better weather? No, at once to Jerusalem. And they found the 11, and those who were with them assembled together and saying, it is true, the Lord has risen and appeared to Simon. It's true. Everything he said, it was true. Then the two told them what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. They made their choice. Let me ask you, what has Jesus resurrected in you? What will you do with Jesus? What will you choose? You say, you're really putting the pressure on. No. Listen, Jesus is going to walk with you and join with you no matter what you decide. He's going to walk with you no matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you ever come back to this place again or if you ever come back, and that isn't the deal. Jesus just wants to join you where you are, because if you build a relationship with Jesus, he knows that intimate relationship, not in a manipulative way, but in the way that you can't stop yourself. Like I couldn't stop myself from coming up on stage, okay? I knew it would be weird and I knew it would be awkward, but I didn't think about any of that, okay? I couldn't stop myself. I ran up on stage. Now, don't y'all try that at home, all right? Okay, we have security for that, but they know me. So I couldn't stop myself, and I got up on the stage. I couldn't stop me. You won't be able to stop yourself. Spend time with the resurrected King, come on, who walked out of the grave, who overcame death. You spend time with that Jesus and stop giving him your list, you'll give him your life. You won't help yourself. You won't be able to stop yourself. You spend time with that Jesus and stop telling him the kind of Jesus he ought to be, what he ought to be taking care of, and who he should be fixing and pointing out everyone else, and start spending time when he breaks bread. You will break your silence and you will get on mission with God, because you won't be able to stop yourself. But he's not the kind of God who gets you in a headlock and makes you make a decision. He's the kind of God who starts to walk on and goes, this was great. Are you the kind of person who asks him to, ho, Jesus, can you stay with us? Stay with me. And invite him to not change the world, but to change you. You'll find out something pretty amazing. When Jesus transforms you, that is his plan to change the world. He said so over and again. And if you stay with me, you're going to hear about what that looks like and how you could decide to do that. The decision's up to us. Jesus already made his decision. He already made his. He's already joining you on the path. He's walking with you right now. Now it's up to you. Would you pray with me? Right now, I want to give you a moment, like I did in other services as well, for you. I don't know your background. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know what you've been through or what you're walking through right now. But I know that Jesus wants to join you on your path. I know that Jesus wants to change you while he walks with you. And if you keep walking with him, you'll find yourself as he joins you in mission. But regardless, he wants to give you peace. Would you just listen to this verse with your eyes closed and heads bowed? This was the last thing that happened. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, peace be with you. Jesus is standing among you right now. What has his resurrection done for you? You say, maybe I don't know if I even believe in that. I'm not sure I'm processing that. Right now, I want to give a chance to pray for you. Maybe you've known about Jesus. You knew he was a great leader. You knew he had done some amazing things in the past. You knew those things. Now you're asking him personally. One of his closest followers, the Apostle Paul, said this, that all of us have sinned. None of us can work our way to a relationship with God. Not one. Not one single one of us. But while we were still in that sin, Christ died for us. He was buried, and he rose again. And if you believe that in your heart and confess it with your mouth, then you will be saved. Then you will have this personal relationship with Jesus. And if you've never done that, I want to give you a chance, whether you're watching online or you're here in person, right now to do just that. Can I pray for you? If you say, that's me, I want to cross this line of faith right now, and that's me, would you just, no heads, no one looking around, would you just raise your hand, just you and me? Raise your hand and hold it up. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else with these? Anyone else before I pray? You don't have to say this prayer exactly the way that I'm saying it, but say it in your own words. Jesus, thank you for joining me on my path. That you died to give me forgiveness of sins. I ask you to forgive me. That you were buried and that you rose again and have new life. And I ask you to give that new life to me. I want your resurrection in me to change me. Maybe you've been following Jesus for quite some time and you say, hey, I've done that. I've prayed that prayer before. Then I want you to pray this prayer in your own words. You certainly know how to pray, perhaps better than I do. Would you just say a prayer in your own words and say, Jesus, thank you for joining me on my path. And God, I've given you lots of lists of things to change. But ultimately, I know your highest priority has been to change me, and I just want to surrender control of those decisions and make the decision to allow you to change everything about me that you want to change. Work through me, oh God. Work in me and then work through me. And show me where to join you at work. God, I thank you for each and every person in this room, those watching online. God, would you meet them where they are and reveal to them what your resurrection can do for them. We pray in Jesus' precious name. Amen.